Welcome to The Best Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Bradley H. Werrell, and we're here to explore options and potentials to help us grow as individuals and as a community with one another in these difficult times and challenging times. We're exploring all manner of potentials related to the human experience, physical, psychological, medical, spiritual. It's a wonderful opportunity that we now experience in this critical phase of our human evolution. And I welcome you to join us in our podcast, become more aware, and identify with people who are helpful and supportive of you in your efforts as a human being on this planet and elsewhere too. We're going to be meeting people who are doing things that are widely variant from what is so-called normal within our society, in the creative space, within the social space. Our common purpose, seeking to generate positive potentials to improve the lives of everyone in our sphere of influence, and to expand that sphere of influence so that we may positively influence others that are not yet engaged directly with us. That's the goal here. We will learn more about each other as we go. I wish you the very best. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Yeah, long time no see.
Ian Martiszus. Now, I probably met you maybe 4 or 5 months ago. I don't know how long it's been.
Yeah, that was November. So about 5 months.
How about that? Like time flies, even though we're not having too much fun, right?
Yeah, I know, really. Well, all the days just blur into one, and there's no real difference.
That's a sign you're doing something real, man. You're making progress and making things happen, I hope.
Yeah, definitely out there grinding away.
Now tell us, so just for the audience, it's Ian is a entrepreneur who has made a company that tests people for immunoglobulins versus the COVID-19. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we're testing neutralizing antibodies against COVID-19, and been doing it for a while now, 9 months.
So tell us a little bit about what's happening. What's the news?
So lately, a lot of the people that have been wanting to get tested are those who have received a vaccination, and they've been wanting to know some sort of definitive proof of their immune status. And so I've started testing people, and it's kind of cool because some of the people I've tested had a sample before they were vaccinated. So you can see the pre and post vaccination antibody levels.
That's cool.
And yeah, and the vaccines are, really effective. It's pretty impressive. So after one dose with the vaccine, you can generate an antibody response that's comparable to a natural infection. And that's with, so I've tested people who have had the Moderna or Pfizer vaccine. Nobody with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine yet, though. But I am looking, and if anybody out there has received that vaccine or is scheduled to, definitely contact me, because I've been making this chart where I put all the antibody levels side by side, and then it's color coded so you can see the response, and also a few people who have had natural infections, so you can really see how they compare in a head-to-head matchup.
It's quite a wild thing you're doing. I must say, I tip my hat to you and give you a feather for your hat too, because it's like it's no small thing. You're entrepreneurial and in pushing out the scientific frontiers a little bit. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think so I about, what was that, end of January, so we're now mid-March, but end of January I published that direct comparison between the natural infection, Moderna and Pfizer vaccines. And I just had 2 people with the natural infection, 2 people with the Moderna vaccine, and 2 with the Pfizer vaccine. But that was actually the first kind of direct comparison between the antibody responses that I'm aware of. So I kind of beat the big people once again.
Yeah.
And really what I think it is a sign of how effective citizen science can be, where I'm I created the system where anybody can sign up and get your antibody test. I tell you your results, but then it's in the capacity of a research study. So then I take the de-identified data and I just publish it on this open access dashboard on my website or on the Cure Hub website. And with citizen science, you give people an opportunity to participate in, the scientific process. They get something out of it by getting their results. And then I'm not in most studies, what you're going to do is you're going to say enroll 100 people, and then you're going to wait until the last person's been enrolled and you've collected their sample, and then you run all of the samples. And so then there's a delay, right, between when the samples are coming in and then when you're actually kind of pushing the results out into the public view. But the way I'm doing it is like as the samples come in, I run them and then I just add the data into the dashboard or whatever. So anybody can see as the data is accumulating.
So this may be a bit technical for the audience, but do you have some kind of institutional review board?
I do. So I went through that process at the very start. There's different IRBs is the
Right.
acronym for them. So there's different kind of commercial IRBs out there.
Huh.
And so I submitted a protocol. I submitted all of the study materials,
Hmm.
which was basically a questionnaire screening form. And they approved it. I have a lot of experience in clinical trials. I used to consent people and work in that field, so I was, aware of what needed to be done. It was not easy. It
No, it's
was,
no small thing. It's quite a chore, and I'm impressed. It's like I say, you've done the hurdles, you've gone through all kind of gamuts, and entrepreneurial spirit. I tip my hat to you essentially because it's like I recognize the difficulties involved here, and it's like, and that's not just your, doing all that stuff. And it's like in the context of, so I can take chances in the marketplace with the people, and it's no small thing. It's a very big thing. It's a risky business.
yeah. It was not easy. It's tedious. It's not difficult in the sense of being like intellectually challenging. It's more of the number of hoops you got to jump through, and it's a lot of paperwork, and you just kind of have to chip away at it and know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So
Like that.
that
It's
that
like it. The intellectual challenge is the small part, as we agree. It is
yeah.
bureaucratic and uncertainty and then anxiety associated with that in the marketplace. It's like it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And like I say, I am very impressed by the the enterprising effort. Okay.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Gives me something to do.
and I said, right. And it's like this. So are you learning anything interesting? What are you learning?
So some of the interesting things I've seen are that you can have a husband and wife pair where one of them gets COVID and the other one doesn't somehow. These are people that live together. They're not socially distancing from each other. Somehow the transmission is not 100% in that kind of close quarter situation. Um, the other thing is the vaccines, like I said earlier, they generate one shot generates an antibody response that's comparable to natural infection. Um, but that's not true for everybody. There have been a few people I've tested that they got a shot of the vaccine and they did not have the strongest antibody response.
Hmm.
after just the first shot. Those people, I have their second sample after their second vaccination, and I haven't run it yet. That's something I'm planning to do this week. So it'll be interesting to see how the booster affects
Right.
those things.
No, I'm very curious. And it's like, do you have a large N number population of people under study?
Currently, no, not really. There's 40 participants.
Mhm.
Of the 40, there's some that have submitted multiple samples, usually after they get sick, or
Right.
they had submitted their first sample after they got sick, and then time passed and they want to know what's going on with their antibody levels. And then also, like I said earlier, the people who have gotten a vaccination, they
So
want to see the change.
it's interesting because, like, do you have information pertaining to did the person think they were infected, and did they get reinfected? And it's
That
a small N number is tough, man. I get it.
No, I have not seen that. And I I'm skeptical of that happening, actually, based off of what I've seen. And I think that, like I said, one vaccination generates an antibody response comparable to a natural infection. So one shot might be good enough. I don't know how much you pay attention to the scientific literature kind of um, debate, but there was a debate about, should we have just gone through and given everybody one shot, and then once everybody's gotten one, come back and give them a second shot, or
Right.
rather than doing two shots for everybody. um, I'd say the small amount of data I have suggests that might have been a good strategy to just do the first shot and then proceed with the second once everybody's been vaccinated once.
It- It's kind
And
of
I've seen,
go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say, and I've seen data. There's a pretty good study published in the last month or so, looking at people who had gotten COVID and then they received one vaccination, and they have an antibody response that is uh, comparable to somebody who has gotten two vaccinations. So if you've gotten sick and you get one vaccine, then you're pretty good. It's not the official recommendation from the CDC yet, but the data suggests it should be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I understand. And like, reinfection rate will be the interesting question, I think.
Yeah, that is definitely something I've been thinking about following up on. Seems pretty unlikely, but you never know. Nothing's 100% in
Right.
biology,
That's right.
but
That's right. So uncertainty we have to leave the door open a crack at least, just
yeah,
so that we're not wrong, right? And
yes,
that's okay
yes.
because we presume that nature is going to figure out some funky way to do something we didn't think of, right?
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's like this. So the issue is, I would like you to tell the audience how to make contact with your organization so they may become tested to boost the numbers, the N number a little bit, perhaps.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. So you can go to curehub.com. So it's CURE-HUB.com. So there's a hyphen in between cure and hub. And then at the landing page, there's a little button that says get started. If you click that, you can make an account, and then I'll receive your email, and then I'll contact you and we can get started on the process. I have to, because it's a study,
Right.
I have to do a screening process, and then you sign a consent, and then you pay for the test. The test itself is, I'm only charging $64, which is basically the cost of supplies. I'm not charging for my time, mainly because I just kind of want it to work from a scientific perspective and to boost the N, like you said. So the test is $64, but then it's $35 for the shipping and handling. which is just because the overnight shipping is pretty expensive, and
Right.
then PayPal takes a cut. So it ends up being $99 total. I ship a sample collection kit to
Yep.
your house. You do a finger stick with a little lancet. It doesn't hurt much at all.
It doesn't hurt you at all, buddy.
Not at all. And then you just collect it in a little tube that comes with the kit, and I include a package to ship it back to me that's already got the label and it's got the overnight express. And I do this through the post office, which people always give me a hard time about because the post office has a bad rap. But I decided on going that route because the post office or the postman comes to everybody's house. And so it's the one thing where you don't have to schedule an appointment with like FedEx or UPS to come pick up your kit. You don't have to go anywhere if you don't want to. And so you just, take your sample, put it back in the package. You could leave it on your porch for the postman if you want, or just, go to the post office and drop it off. But trying to make it as easy as possible for people to participate. And yeah, the more people, the better we can start to get enough data to make some interesting observations. There's a questionnaire that comes with the study that asks you questions about if you have, like a known positive test result from your doctor, if you've been diagnosed, because they're not necessarily the same thing. Some people will not be tested, but their doctor will say, yeah, you had COVID. I know you did, even though you didn't get tested. So we ask about that. And then also the symptoms you had, if you think you've had it, because some people had a COVID-like illness and didn't go to the doctor. And so they don't really know for sure.
Right.
And so then the idea was to try and then, we're doing the antibody test so we can kind of see if you actually did have it. And so then we're trying to tease apart, which symptoms are really indicative of COVID infection and which are not. And yeah, it'd be great to get as many people to participate as possible. And we'll be asking about vaccinations and which vaccine, try and see which ones are most effective.
Right. And it's a challenging thing. It's like an associate of mine became tested. He got antibody tested and tested positive for the antibodies. So he got infected and recovered. And it's interesting because there's the institution we are employed by, both of us, is talking about making special privileges available for people who have received the vaccination, but not for people who show antibodies. And it's like, well, isn't that the purpose of it? And I'm like, it's upsetting. It's political at this point. You know what I mean? It's like it diverges from science in a way that is distressing, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's it is disappointing how a lot of the decisions that have been made and continue to be made are not based on science. And then there's also the aspect of essentially scientific censorship that's occurring.
Yeah, I would point to it as even scientism, which is the appearance of science without the actual science. It's insubstantial claims of science, right? Right, the facade without the guts of the building, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Very disturbing.
The word science has become basically a political weapon when science itself is just an iterative process where you're testing a falsifiable hypothesis. And it's only a matter of time before a lot of what is considered to be scientific fact is proven to be incorrect. And that's what science is all about, actually.
That's the funny thing. I agree with your premise there, but I'm a rational person, and this is coming from a modern perspective, okay? Which is to say, the postmoderns don't happen to agree. The postmoderns appear to be interested in making noises that are convincing to some or sufficient quantities despite reason and absent logic to
Yeah.
change the political outcomes of a circumstance, which is to say, they're not worth talking to because they're not reasonable people, which is the hallmark of modernism, I suppose.
Yeah. There's a certain amount of they lack the desire for open debate, right?
Right.
Which is not how you figure out the best course of action, right? And
Well,
you have to be,
go
you
ahead.
have to, I think that there's a certain lack of humility
Huh.
that has infected our society.
That's
And
like a lack of humility. I regard it as absolute hubris, absent reason, with full prejudice against reason. And it is not it is absolute power lust.
yes, and I think it it comes from a place of cowardice potentially, because you have to be relatively confident in yourself to leave the door open to being wrong, right? And that is what, yeah, that's what it all comes down to is, if you enter into debate, you're, um,
That's right.
like I said, leaving the door open that you're gonna lose or you're
That's right.
gonna be proven wrong. And
You
it
accept the premise that you might not be infallible.
exactly.
It's
Ex-
like it appears that there we are conflicted with a certain segment that is seeking to have papal infallibility.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and they'll put you like Copernicus in the tower for 50 years or whatever it takes to cause you to stop being the problem for the
yeah.
doctrine that they're attempting to dogma they're attempting to promote. And that's okay.
Hmm.
But it's like it makes it easier to tell which side of the coin you're on, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think it is a certain amount of social kind of construct, in group, out group, a litmus test, right? Whether you're willing to just accept statements or things as fact without much critical thought or you know pushback on those
Okay.
ideas.
I regard it as authoritarianism. It's like you accept the authority or you're individual thinker.
Yeah, I believe in this that certain segments of society have this concept of privileged knowledge where only certain people are capable of knowing certain things, right? And just doubting them, that that's not even an option, right? Like you, which is why they don't enter into debate because of that belief in privileged knowledge, right?
That's right. It's like you're not worth talking to if you're not among the enlightened ones, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's stunning. It's like, okay, what's that mean? Um, we don't have to talk to everybody, I suppose. How about that?
Yeah, it's true. You don't have to talk to everybody, but it only really works if you're gonna let people be free to make their own decisions, right?
Hmm. The argument will be, no, it'll work if they just obey.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's like, okay, we don't have to agree on that point, but it's like, wow, it's like now it's getting kind of rowdy because it's the application of the instruments of force to compel the obedience of those who wish not to obey, right? And it's like,
Mhm.
wow, now it's getting like truly rowdy. Like this thing with um special passports for people who have been vaccinated for whatever purpose. And it's like, wow, this is getting a little bit over the top. It's like that's just seemingly unacceptable and questionable by virtue of its authoritarian nature.
Yeah, and you know what always gets me about it is if you're that confident in your opinion, that like, oh, it you have to be vaccinated. It doesn't count if you just had a natural infection or whatever. Like, but if you're that confident about anything, why not enter into debate? Because in theory, you're just going to be proven
An
right.
easy one, right? It should be an easy one for you. It should not even
Yeah,
a problem. Why not knock the guy down? And that's the fool who will show up in the debate, right?
yeah,
Who dare would debate the man that is substantially buffered by reality?
yeah, exactly. But I guess certain people or groups don't see it that way, which is unfortunate, which in the long run just, holds back scientific progress.
Right.
So
Right. It's troubling because it's like this. It also holds back public confidence in whatever we is going on because it's like there's uncertainty. You've developed you're not entering into the conflict of reason and conflicting it out with and then parsing it out with the people who don't agree with you to come up with a solution that is amenable in a reasonable way to the population at large. And it's like, well, that's not good because we got this polarization thing going on right now. And it's like, okay, you're only making it worse by not having the conversation, right?
yeah, and I think people generally they respect those who are willing to admit that they were wrong more than people who are not willing to enter into debate.
I think that's true. I think it's true. It's quite fascinating though, but it is like, oh, what a weird time we live in, man. I'm like,
Yeah,
I like
I
this.
think
So you started a new business. That's no
yeah.
small thing. And it's like, okay, how's that? Is it going well business wise? Are you happy?
Uh it is very challenging to bootstrap your way to success in biotech. Um that was maybe a foolish decision of mine. I was put in, I think, a tough spot because I had published the first
Right.
antibody survey in the nation, and then I was contacted by a lot of people who wanted to test this because I was the only one who could do it or was
Right.
known to be
Right.
able to do it at the time.
Right.
Um, so I needed to, create a buffer, a liability buffer essentially between me and people I had never met who
Right.
were contacting me on the internet. So I built the company, and the process of getting the IRB approval and getting like developing my own home collection kit
Right.
took time. And by then there were other people or major players who were,
I got interested at that point.
yeah, who were fulfilling or filling that gap.
Heavily
Um,
competitive.
yeah. And so, and I was doing that as, a side gig from my
Right.
normal 9 to 5 job. Um, so it, it's a tough decision. Like looking back in hindsight, yeah, maybe I should have just not not try to do more than just that first antibody survey, but then think like, what would any reasonable, compassionate person do when you have strangers contacting you saying, I really want an antibody test because I want to go visit my grandmother who's in a nursing home and she's
I respect it.
does
I totally
doesn't have yeah, so
feel I
like
respect that because it is there's a the human element of it, the emotionality associated with it. And it's like it's a tough call. And it's like when you told me you went into this business, I was like, oh my, because I like been duking it out in here when I got done maybe 2 years ago. sold out to the hospital because they made me knuckle under. Okay. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I didn't want to be negative towards you by any means, because it's like, it's tough, man. And I'm like, okay, what's that mean? Don't know. Plug your line again so that the people know where to go if they want to get an antibody test, right?
Yeah, cure-hub.com. I could definitely use some more people signing up, really get the business going. I'm now starting to think about beyond COVID, what to do, whether I want to keep going with Cure Hub. I think
Right.
that I do. I really like the idea of kind of home-based medicine or home-based lab testing.
Right.
Um,
I like that, because it's like, the issue is, this is the concern in my mind with regard to lab testing. As a physician, I order tests, and I'm like, I don't want anybody knowing besides me and the patient what's going
mhm.
on, because it's like, it's nobody's business. And their interjection of the corporate interest between me and the patient's personal medical interest is not useful at all. And so, like, one of the things I do, I just opened up my online telemedicine service, like,
Awesome.
and it's like, well, but the trick is, can I order lab tests? You know what I mean? And how do
Yeah.
I order lab tests in a distant state? I'm in Arizona, and it's like, but I need to set it up so that I can order lab tests for patients in places that I have licenses in, and be able to provide useful, meaningful medical information to them based upon um, objective data, right?
Yeah, that's really what I would like to do if I can make it there. The idea is that, yeah, you'd have a physician who orders a lab test, and then you could send the Cure Hub kit to them, or just get that sent to their house, and they can do their finger stick. There's a lot of evidence that you can research that shows you can use a finger stick to do a lot of the standard lab tests that would be available in the clinic, right?
Good.
And
That's good. Now, I'm interested in particular labs. I will send you a list of them so that you
mhm.
can review that and perhaps get back to me on that. Because it's like, I'll work with you. You're a good fellow, man. You're like this. You're like a wild man, as far as I'm concerned. We're out in the jungle here and trying to make it work. And it's like bucking with big dinosaurs. These corporate interests are no small thing to be contending with. Right? It's like,
Yes.
okay, and it's like, be careful out there, man. Make sure you don't get underfoot, right?
Yeah, yeah. Luckily, I don't think they would pay attention to me yet. But
No,
I
but
mean,
it's like, what you do, they may, right? That's different than you, but it's the things you do are different than that which you do.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Um, uh, my hope is that, if that were to happen, that they just realize maybe I'm onto something, and then they start to offer those services to people, because at the end of the day, in my opinion, what really matters is that we kind of eliminate as many hands that are in the pot as possible, and try and create a system where it's like the doctor and the patient, and this lab testing from home would help do that. Right now,
Right?
you're not don't have as many hospital administrators, whatnot. um, so we'll see. I There are some other groups out there that are trying similar things. I don't know that they're doing it in the same way I am, or have the same ideas I do. Um, but
Have
either
you
way,
have you thought of linking up with them?
I have a little bit. It's it's tough. I think it's just tough to decide what to do in terms of, what has the greatest payoff, right? So I'm trying to figure out, what is it that is the fastest, shortest path to success, right? To something that really gives me a foothold. So
That's right.
maybe eventually.
It's tough, man. It's like there's a lot of variables, and it's like, okay, doing anything costs a lot of capital, which is financial, intellectual, and labor
Yes.
and time.
Yeah.
And it's no small thing to commit yourself in such a fashion.
Yeah. I've definitely come to the realization of how inflated prices are for any like biotech supplies or stuff like that. Which back when I kind of worked in an academic lab, you just weren't aware,
That's,
right?
that's right. So you're not paying attention to it, probably.
Yeah, exactly. But my suspicion is that because science is so heavily subsidized and regulated um, by the federal government, prices are super inflated. So reagents that I know are and supplies that I know are produced at an economy of scale, and huge bioreactors are hundreds of dollars for something that could easily be way cheaper, right?
Mhm.
It obviously takes some time to develop, but then once these products are developed, then you can produce massive amounts at a time. And so there's not true competition. I think that people have misconceptions about medicine in our country, where it's not necessarily like a capitalist medical system. It is.
Oh, it's
um,
not. It's like it's an interesting function. Because I've been in private practice since 2006. Okay, and it's like this. Okay, this is it right here, kids. Everybody, pay attention for a second, because this is the wisdom of the ages that I spent blood, sweat, and tears on the wall, beating my head against it to gain. Which is like this. It has a lot of appearances of a marketplace, and it in fact is not. It is it's controlled. There's no market. It appears to be a market is controlled by a central authority. It's an authoritarian, dictatorial, non-marketplace with the facade of a market to for whatever purpose that is political, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, I I think that there is definitely a lot of um, kind of lobbying that's done that prevents improvements. But then, mm, and you're right, it's like a heavily regulated capitalist system, right? Um,
It's like this.
which
It's like
isn't an
no.
open marketplace anymore, and it's also subsidized in certain ways that inflates prices. So then it isn't a true competitive open marketplace
Let's
that
say this.
allows the cream.
Yeah, it is not competitive. It is monopolistic.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, so your terminology is a little bit soft still in my estimation, because it's like this. No, it is wicked, monopolistic, controlling, and authoritarian, and not pleasant. It's not pleasant, and it's like, okay, it's okay. Once you gotta accept what is. When the rain is coming down, you don't pretend it's not raining because it's wet, right? And it's okay. You just go like, okay, well, how do we deal
Yes.
with that? We put our coats and hats on and deal with it, right? And it's like, but
Mhm.
you gotta be very certain as to what you're dealing with when you're in the weather, right?
Mhm.
I tell you what, I watch YouTubes, and I'm watching YouTubes, and I like it's so you got the AI pushing stuff at you, and it's like what the AI pushes at me, and it hasn't pushed it for a while, but it's like guys going out in the woods with a knife and a saw and a tent and a match and a stake, and that's it in the snow, right? And it's like this. It's just like, look, I love that, because it's like this. It's like, look, when it's 0 degrees and you have a fire and a stake and a tent, it's like, get it right, because it's going to get cold, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, I like that. I like it because there's no pretending with the weather. It is what it is. It's not what it is not, and you cannot make it believe it's something different very easily, I think. And so this is where I'm at with regard to engaging in commerce, which is what you're doing with your business. it's commerce, and it's like, okay, so how do we promote it to people, to provide a value to people so that they will be willing to suffer the costs of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. My view of healthcare is actually like you have all these entrenched stakeholders or powers that be.
Right.
And they're all kind of competing against each other in one way or another,
That's right.
or their interests are competing against each other. And so what I see is, like drawing and quartering with a horse, where you have like horses. Usually there's a person in the middle, but just think of healthcare where a horse is pulling one way, and then on the opposite side, another horse is pulling the other way. Healthcare is in the middle, and it's a big rat's nest of like string or whatever. And the more you try and pull in one direction to like fix insurance or fix the hospital side of things, the tighter you, the more the opposite side pulls against that, and then the tighter it just binds to itself. And the less likely it is that you'll ever get that rat's nest unwound. And so the solution, in my opinion, is that you just have to create something new, because the current system is never going to be fixed. And that will involve technology. That's my goal with Cure Hub, and what I'm kind of hoping with the antibody testing is that it would give me enough traction that then I could expand. And I see the home or like direct to consumer lab testing as one way that you can really cut out a lot of kind of gatekeepers
Right.
and those middlemen that drive up costs, and you can create a new marketplace that frees you from that bureaucratic bloat, right? And if it's a new system, then you're more likely to introduce more competition, which will, improve outcomes and bring down prices.
Yeah, it's like this. So it's like, so I have some parsing to do with your words, which is like, it's actually the introduction of a real marketplace as it's opposed to a controlled and manipulated marketplace, or facsimile of a marketplace. And it's like the middleman thing, the corporate intermediaries between the provider and the patient is the problem. And it's like this. It's like it is the introduction of an actual marketplace when people actually pay for what they buy, as opposed to pay a guy way more than they buy in the marketplace to get some substandard service over here. And it's like, that's how I see it. Is like the intermediaries, they have guys that are, their job is to make it so they don't pay for the thing that you're asking for. Right? It's like there's gotta be like a job, which is to figure out how to rook the people who are actually paying for the service so they never get what they need when the doctor orders it or something like that. There's like, here, justify why we're not paying for this, and it's worth money. You figure out a new one for this code right here, and it's big bucks. If you can like knock it down by 5%, we can judge it by how it works, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's how insurance companies work a lot of ways, with the adjusters and what they're going to approve. And
No,
they
it's
want to
a
make
fascinating thing. It's like the large amount of my effort, like it's an interestingly increasing amount of intellectual effort goes into dealing with the insurance company, what they just said. Okay, so it's like this. So I will order some diabetic supplies, which you think would be easy, which we used to order very generically, like, okay, testing supplies for testing your blood sugar daily or 2 times a day. And then so we would write it generic. So it'll be test strips and lancets for the patient's glucometer. Generic. Yeah, none of that's acceptable anymore. You can't do it that way. You have to write specifically what brand they're buying, or it gets rejected. And you have to go around this karaoke wheel, which is like, it's karma. You just keep getting slapped in the face. That didn't work, doctor. This, like, what works? I can't tell you. And just do it like, It's like, what is the purpose of this? It doesn't serve any purpose but slow down the fulfillment of the order, right?
Yeah, and along the way, what you're not doing is practicing medicine, because that is not medicine, and that's the worst part. Is um, it's preventing you from doing what you really want to do, which is be a doctor and help patients.
It's a
Um,
it doesn't really prevent it. It just takes a lot of it reduces the amount of energy you have available for that purpose. And
yeah,
it is certainly diversionary and not productive. And it's not fulfilling, and it's not anything positive. It's just irritating, which is quite okay, and absorbing of effort.
and then the patient, because of the sky high costs of healthcare, which are inflated because of the lack of a true open marketplace, the patient has to use insurance, right, to be able to afford that. And so then they're at the mercy of the insurance company, um, their approval for these devices. And if there was a true open marketplace, then there would be a lot more competition, and it wouldn't be a big deal for the patient to just buy it on their own, right? You'd say, hey, go buy this Lancet and this glucometer, and they would be super cheap, right? The patient would be able to afford that out of their pocket.
Right.
Um, but because of the approvals for the different medical devices, how long it takes, how much money it takes to
Right.
do the studies and stuff
But
like that.
one of the issues that we had was is that as a Medicare provider, okay, so we charge Medicare a certain rate for a certain level of visit, okay? And it's like this: if you come in paying cash and you're destitute and I charge you a different amount, oh, that's fraud. That's Medicare fraud.
Yeah.
And it's like, really? Well, Medicare fraud because I'm offering some charity to somebody in my community that needs some medical services, and oh my goodness, right? And it's like, I think you do better just give it away than to try to be offer a cut rate. I think that's
Yeah.
but I'm not in private practice anymore. I work for the hospital system.
And then the hospitals, which, and this is probably a reason you're at the hospital and not private practice anymore, they uh, undertake a lot of anti-competitive behavior, right? When they're negotiating with insurance companies. And this is something that a lot of people are not aware of. And so they'll say, if we're going to accept your patients, then they have to go to our system. They have to be in our system only. But they don't say it like that. They'll create some sort of definition that miraculously only applies to them, right? And so then this small guy, the solo practitioner, is kind of cut out of all the action. And then the patient's insurance is not going, it's going to be out of network, right, to go to the private practice. And so, but that happens behind closed doors, a lot, those negotiations and stuff, and it's not known to the public
Right.
how healthcare systems are also screwing over the patients. And
So
that's
the interesting function of it is like what blew my mind away, and this is right like probably 6 months before we sold out 2 years ago to the hospital, was we discovered that the hospital, we're in a rural area, and so there's a federally designated rural health clinic, okay, and I could be one, but the hospital can make 3.5 times what they'll pay me. And so it's like, oh, I'm done, because
Yeah.
they get 3.5 times what I might get paid, and I can't live on what I might get paid. I guess I'm done. I'm like, okay, I get it. Surrender.
Yeah,
Throw
exactly.
the white flag up and call it good.
And that's, why we're, in my opinion, the lack of knowledge for the general public of those kind of anti-competitive behaviors on the healthcare system side is why I think we're accelerating towards socialized medicine, which would be a disaster, in my opinion. Um, is everything gets blamed on the insurance companies, but it's, I mean, if you go in, if you're getting healthcare, you're in bed with the devil and multiple devils.
Oh yeah. It's
Except for the uh, healthcare practitioners like yourself and the staff. Those are the only people in the whole thing that are actually, trying to, that usually have the patient's best interest in mind.
we hope so. That's what we
But
hope.
the-
It's like it's just to try to help the patient. It's like, what are you doing here, man? If you're not doing that, what are you doing here? Right?
which is why we need to get to a open marketplace where you have the physician and the patient and as few hands in the pot as possible.
Yep.
That is the solution. And if we can unlock that somehow as a society, then we will see rapid improvements in outcomes,
That's right.
rapid decreases in costs.
Oh, yeah. The issue, it's funny that like people say there's not enough physicians, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that's a ridiculous statement because it's like a market statement, but it lacks one element of it, which is there's not enough physicians at this price, right? And it's like the people want to have a lot of cheap physicians. And it's like, yeah, there's not going to be a lot of cheap physicians. There's going to be a lot of physicians that are at some price, or there's going to be fewer physicians at a lower price. And it's like, that's how it is. And you get what you pay for. And it's like the premise that is being promoted by the I guess I would call it the media or the authorities that there's not enough physicians is propaganda for the purpose of influencing the outcome of whatever it is that's happening. And it is. And it's like, it's okay. That's part of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
But none of us like it.
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, there is a lack of physicians. I mean, if you try and schedule with a specialist, you're looking at like a 6-week wait or longer. And I mean, like in
Right.
my area, a lot of specialists, they're not accepting new patients,
There's not enough of them.
Yeah, and I think that the process of creating physicians needs to be reexamined as well.
Mhm.
There's a massive bottleneck in medical school matriculation, which comes to, like there's a hard cap on the number of
Oh, yeah.
physicians created each year because there's only so many residency spots,
That's right.
right?
That's right.
And so there needs to be a new way of thinking about that. How do you train doctors?
It's like that, like, okay, it's like it's all well controlled by the powered established peoples that are have their own interests that are perhaps deviant from the rest of the public, right? That's the issue.
Yeah,
that we're with.
and a lot of people, I don't know that they think about the totality of the system like that, like and I think it's due to the corporate media influence on the dialogue, right? Where you hear just about insurance, right? But
Right.
when was the last time there was a national story about ideas for creating more doctors or a more efficient process for creating doctors to
Right. And it's like it is I would say it's not it's I wouldn't use the word dialogue, but I would use public narrative. Okay.
Yeah.
Like control the what the people say about what's happening in a general sense, because that's what guides our thinking in some sense, because it's like it defines the lanes and the alleys of conversation that will attempt to describe the situation that we have before us, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of similar to talking about COVID,
Oh my,
right?
you're gonna get me.
Right? Like
Oh yeah.
there's an acceptable conversation, and
Right.
there's unacceptable conversations.
Right, and it is interesting to me because it is the dissent from the acceptable conversation, which is the publicly promoted narrative, right?
Mhm,
Is unacceptable, and it's like will be punished. It
mhm.
appears, and there is no free speech, and there is no dissent because dissent is cruelly punished.
Yeah, ridiculed, right? You kind of risk your career. I mean, especially as a physician, it's a lot easier for me,
Huh.
right, to sit here and be like, yeah, there's some poor decisions being made, and we should maybe doubt the accepted dogma, right, in certain circumstances, or at least be open to doubt, um, versus somebody who is, say, like a big time physician at a hospital, they're a director or whatever, right?
Why?
They're
No, there was a state senator in Minnesota that got he got brought before the board for his divergent opinions. And I don't know what happened about that, but I talked to the man and I'm like, wow. And it's like, a state senator, and it's political is all this is. And it's like, what does that mean? Well, there's no free speech here, and there's no open dialogue, and it's just okay. It's brutal, and it's like just distressing. Right?
yeah, especially if you're kind of willing to take the leave no stone unturned approach to problems, right? Where it's like I'll listen to anybody. It doesn't matter your credentials. Certain people have a way of looking at problems that are unique,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like or phrasing things that just kind of like shake the box and make you think about it differently.
Mhm.
Um, it's easy to get tunnel vision when you're in that field or whatever, in a specific field for so long, surrounded by the same people or same type of people. So it's always good to hear somebody else's perspective that is looking at it, like maybe from a step removed, right?
I think challenge is always good. It's like challenge is good because it sharpens all the instruments, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like okay, because it's like, well, I don't have to be right every time, right? But
Hmm.
but by practicing and engaging and duking it out with people who don't agree with me, I sharpen my own wit and my understanding so that it's more appropriate to what is actually occurring that we agree upon.
Yeah, and that's how learning works.
It is. It's like learning is good, right? It's
Yeah,
like it's like
I
this
think so.
automatic non-learning. Not so good. Maybe not so good. Maybe it's going to be more expensive to not learn, right?
Yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah.
oh well, I think that's okay. But it's like watching everybody kind of wake up from this little daze we happen to find ourselves in. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be interesting to see where true public opinion stands on a lot of it.
I don't know that we'll get that because it's like I don't trust much that comes out. I'm like a skeptical person, I suppose.
Yeah,
It's
and
like
then you have like the censorship aspect, which causes self-censorship, so
right,
people are
it's just
less.
there's a huge bias that's drifting us in a direction that we don't it makes it so that it's hard to tell what's actually occurring. And I think that's not unintentional, okay?
Yeah, it's just hard to tell where it comes from, the motivations, if it's kind of like an innate psychological perspective versus some sort of controlled narrative, like you say. I There's definitely some powers that be that are
There's
trying
interest.
to maintain their power.
Well, oh, surprise, 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 right? So
It's just
interested,
nature.
vested interest is what we would say, right? They want to
Yes.
maintain their current powerful positions. It's like how surprising, right? In a
Hmm.
million years, what else could be different? It won't be that one. Won't be different.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why so important to resist changes to a system that is self-righting, and censorship is one of those changes that you have to resist. And it's not just like the overt censorship that's the problem, it's the result, which is people self-censoring,
Right.
like
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, Ian, I want to thank you for coming on my podcast today. And I want to give you another chance. Tell us about your organization and how the people can connect to it.
Yeah, go to cure-hub.com or cure-hub.com. Quick, get started on the landing page. Enter create an account. I'll get your email and I'll contact you and we'll get you started. And then we can send you the sample collection kit. I can give you a COVID-19 neutralizing antibody test, tell you your results. I add the de-identified results to a open access dashboard because my idea is just to provide some transparency to the public. The data is not gamed or anything, you can see your data there, so that nothing funny's going on. And then with your support, I'll be trying to build a kind of direct to consumer lab testing business, which I think will be one way that we can start to move away from the inefficient healthcare system that we have. And so that, physicians like Bradley here can say, hey, I'm going to get this home collection kit sent to your house. You do your finger stick, you ship it out to the lab, and then I'll get your results and we'll do the video conference or whatever. So it's really lends itself to the remote medicine, which I think is key because as you go remote, you are starting to shed the additional hands that are in the pot that drive up healthcare prices.
Real good. Real good. So, Ian, we'll look forward to chatting with you here in the near future and check in again and make sure where we're at and maybe who knows when, right?
Yeah, that sounds great. It was, thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure to chat, like hearing your perspective on things, and hope everything's going well in Arizona for you.
No complaint.
Your
Go ahead.
telehealth setup, that sounds super cool.
It's all right. And it's just getting started. So we're seeing what happens next. And we'll look forward to chatting with you here in the near future. How about that?
That sounds great.
All right. Thanks for coming on again.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Best Medicine Podcast with Bradley H. Werrell, D.O. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe below, either over there or over there. Also, if you're interested in a medical consultation with myself, there's also information below.